Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining this webinar offered by Meirc Training and Consulting. And it's a great pleasure that I will be sharing with you today the results of a study that we have done internally on data that has been collected for the past 2 years from participants who attended our training in those formats, in online format and in face-to-face or classroom format. It was a population of around 4,000 participants from 2021 and 2022. We ended up with a very large sample of around 1,700 plus participants that were distributed into online classes and face-to-face classes. In some cases, they were integrated with each other. And this sample, as we will explain later, is specifically extracted from the training courses that ended up with an exam. And the exam score was our main indicator of learning acquisition. And the passing grade out of this score is usually decided. So all these numbers, all these information are going to serve us to answer a very important question. After the pandemic, now where companies have adapted in the same time online classes and face-to-face classes, I guess everyone would like to see some data shedding the light on where do students learn better, what is their preferred way of learning, at least from what their data says. And what I'm really happy about today is that for maybe, dare I say, the first time in the GCC region, that this is data extracted about learners exclusively from GCC. It's very localized, it's fully in context, and at the same time, it allows us to generate findings that are relevant to our culture, to our way of learning, and to the regular participant and the typical participant that we have in the region, and which is something I'm really happy about. Finally, some research that is about us, from us, and for us. So without further ado, allow me please to quickly introduce the company that is offering this webinar today, which is Meirc Training and Consulting. We're very proud, honestly, that the company is this year celebrating its 65-year milestone. That's a great number of years in the market. Honestly, it's something that we are very proud about, we're very happy about, and we're thankful for every client, for every participant who entrusted us in their learning and development plans to ensure that we grow to become the provider that we are today, offering public courses, in-house courses, consulting and coaching for everyone in the region for the past 65 years. All of this is offered based on our values, which we really try our best to live by day, which are mastery, excellence, innovation, reliability, and client centricity. Everyone in the company is always geared to live by those standards to achieve our mission to become your most trusted partner for learning and development. So the company, as it grew, the portfolio of courses grew as well. A lot of categories, as you can see, is in HR, in project management, in finance and accounting, IT management, marketing and sales, and etc. And all our courses, thank God, now are, at least not all, but most of them are endorsed by international bodies that certify these courses and review their quality to ensure that they have the ultimate standard of learning and development up to date with the book of knowledge of their own practices, and always offering the participants the cutting edge information and research in the market itself. As of myself, very quickly, my name is Rabia. I happen to be very interested in data science, and my aspiration is to encourage every HR professional in our region to incorporate HR analytics or data analytics competency as part of their development plan. Studies tell us that, not at least studies by international consulting firms globally, say that the adoption rate of HR analytics is very, very low. The confidence level in implementing those methods are still in the very early stages. So I'd like to encourage everyone watching this webinar, whether today or through the recording later on, because this webinar is being recorded, just to make sure that it reaches everyone who's interested in it. We really just want to ensure that you incorporate this HR analytics competency within your development. So let me give you a little bit of background about the study itself. So as I was delivering courses in both formats since March 2020, I was always asking myself, reading, asking participants, researching how the format of learning influences the output of learning itself. Is it really that face-to-face is better than the online? Are they the same? What does it depend on? How we can tell? We were only in the hunch phase. We didn't have enough data in the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. But the hunches that came to me by the end of 2020, and then as me and my 25 other colleagues who deliver not less than 150 training days every year, we're talking about thousands of days here, ladies and gentlemen, I was always having those functions. I thought first that to learn online, the learner must have a different set of skills from those used in the face-to-face training. Maybe the same set of skills, but with some addition, with some variation, with some adaptation to the online learning. I'm almost sure whether being a consultant delivering those trainings or a participant attending webinars and trainings and studying online during the pandemic, that the pressure of interruption is very, very high in the online format, especially because you're working in a device that keeps on interrupting you by nature, which is your phone. And most of the participants are attending to their phones or their tablets, not through their laptops. The third thing that I always had as a hunch, and again, none of this was confirmed with research, is that some participants had to attend online courses against their will, or at least against their preference. Again, no data, but I had this feeling from the informal conversations, from my own preference as a student as well as a trainer. And finally, and I believe that that would create a little bit of friction in the room, but I hope it's only a positive friction for reflections. I noticed that gender seemed to be a predictor of the learning outcome as well. So as someone who likes to follow a rigorous research methodology rather than relying on hunches, I thought that I need some data to back up all these assumptions that I had in mind. And as the research question matured in my mind, I came up with 3 hypotheses that I really wanted to test. And those 3 hypotheses, as you can see in front of you, I'll just call them H1, H2, and H3, just to differentiate between them. Unfortunately, the time will not allow us to cover the H3, which is the language material, language, sorry. But let me explain a little bit the hypothesis one by one. So first of all, my first hypothesis, which is H1, assumes that the learning acquisition, which here we are measuring through exam scores, is predicted by the training form. So whether you are attending online or face-to-face, that influences, or in other terms, causes a variation in your exam score. My second hypothesis was that, again, learning acquisition measured through exam scores could be predicted by participants' gender. So whether you are a male or a female, your score will be impacted by this fact. And the third one is that the language of the material that is delivered to participants also influences their learning acquisition. So all of those assumptions are subject to test right now with data that we aim to analyze in order to whether validate or reject those three hypotheses. As I told you, we will not unfortunately have time today to discuss the hypothesis number 3, which is the impact of the material language, but definitely the data is there and the analysis is done. And if you're interested in such a discussion, why not? You can have it aside, or maybe in another webinar later on. So as we wrap up with the hypothesis, let me give you some background facts that will allow us to give more credibility to the research method, to the data collection method, and at the same time to the analysis and to the generalization of the output and the interpretation later on. So what's very nice about Meirc public courses is that they follow a very standardized 5-day. So all of them are 5 days courses. So the learning acquisition in this format is unified versus the number of days. Because sometimes you might say that the number of days of the training might impact the learning acquisition. And in this case, all courses have 5 days of training. So this is not a variable, it's a constant. And in all those courses, the exam happens on the last day. By the end of the last day of the week, they are all delivered by bilingual consultant. Hence, as you can see the link with the hypothesis number 3, although the course is delivered mainly in English or mainly in French, the GCC participants prefer most of the time a mix of languages. So that's why the delivery language is always a mix, while the material language might be different. So that, as we said, is a topic for further research. All exams again are strictly extracted from course material. So that's again a constant across all the courses that have been studied, which are a lot, to be honest. And finally, all exams follow the same format of 40 multiple choice questions, which are equally weighted. So every question contributes to 1 point out of 40 of those exams. Now, one thing that I'd like to share with you is that the pass rate at Meirc is 70%. So for us, 28 questions are required to be answered correctly in order to get a pass on the exam itself. Now, out of curiosity, what I did through the research is also to set the pass rate at different levels and to see how the contribution of the independent variable will be different. However, again, it's not the scope of this webinar, but if we have time later on, we will share this with you through our other content, maybe another webinar, or why not a full comprehensive article about this study itself. So this is a little bit of background facts. I'd like to highlight that as usual, and for those of you who attend most of the time webinars with us, please feel free, if you have any question at any time, to drop it to me on the chat, and I'll make sure that I will answer it as much as I can, as much as my knowledge encompasses as well. So let me brief you a little bit about the sample. The sample that we are studying was randomly chosen from a pool of 4,000 participants representing the GCC region. So all of them, or at least 95% of them, work in companies who operate in the GCC area, and the representation is really proportional to the number of population in each country, whether be it Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, for example. So all of these participants were extracted randomly from the pool of 4,000 participants who attended Meirc professional certificate courses, those courses that are distinguished by having the participants sit for an exam by the last day, as we said. And the random sample size was 1,722 participants, and that's a very good sample size. For those of you who are aware about research methods and about academic studies, that kind of sample size allow us for a high level of confidence, usually in our data findings and in our inferential statistics later on. So moving forward, I'd like to give you some more insights about the data itself. So what we had out of those 1,722 participants, we had around 1,000 in the classroom and 700 in online learning. And out of those in the classroom, we had around 30% of females, while in the virtual learning, we had around 45 or maybe 35, 65. So as you can see, first insight that you can get from the data itself is that the percentage of female in the virtual learning is higher than the percentage of female in the classroom. Now, can this tell us some facts? Not yet, but I thought it's very important to share with you the sample description itself to get an idea, the 1,722 participants, how they were distributed. So again, as you can see, we had around 1,000 participants in the classroom and 700 in the virtual online format courses. Out of the 1,000 in the classroom, we had 700 male and 300 females, while in the virtual learning or the online format, we have around 470 male and 270 females. So maybe we cannot yet tell because test the data against some statistical test. We need to make sure that this is not happening by chance. But it seems at the first glance that females are more represented in the virtual learning courses and the online courses. So that was about the sample, and my first section is to try to go on and test the first hypothesis, H1, as I told you, which says that the exam score is predicted by the training type, whether the training type is online or face-to-face. And just to give you an idea, usually what we are dealing with here is two kinds of output. The first output is we're going to see whether a student has passed or failed. And on the other end, we're also going to create the score itself as a continuous variable. So we have one binary variable, which is pass or fail, and we have another one, which is a continuous variable, which is the score itself out of 100. So let's start by having a look at what we have observed from the descriptive statistics that has been done. So as you can see, in the classroom, 82% of participants passed, while 18% failed. In the virtual learning, 75% passed and 25% failed. So the data is starting to give us hints. We cannot yet claim that the hypothesis is valid because we need to do some rigorous statistical testing on it, as you can see, as you will see later on. But the data is hinting that the pass rate is higher in the classroom. Now, something else that also gives us a hint that learning acquisition is higher in the classroom is that the average score of participants in the classroom was 80 out of 100, while the average score in the virtual learning was 76 out of 100. Although both are above 70, but there is a difference of scores in the average entries. Now, mind you that the standard deviation of the sample is was really homogeneous across all categories. So somehow it gives us more confidence that our sample was randomly chosen. We didn't have really a lot of outliers in the sample as such. So this is the descriptive analysis of the data itself. So starting by diving a little bit more into the statistics tests, which really give us more insights and more solid insights. The first test that has been done on the data is a test called a chi-square test. And the chi-square test is usually used to compare the distribution of two binary variables, which are, in this first case, a comparative distribution between an expected number of participants who failed or succeeded in virtual and classroom, which assumes that the type of course does not make any difference, and then we compare versus the actual count. So if you follow with me on the screen, the expected count in case there is no relationship between the class type and the pass or fail should be 153 participants that will fail in the virtual learning and 205 in the classroom, while what we observed is 184 in the virtual learning and 174 in the classroom. At the same time, the pass rate is well different from the expected. As you can see, we expected 583 participants to pass in the virtual learning, while 552 only passed. And we expected that 781 participants passed from the classroom, while 812 passed. So now this is not enough, because for those of you who are interested more in data analytics, a very important output that we need to look at in all statistical tests, including the chi-square test, is the significance of the test itself, which tells us the probability of any finding happening by chance. And when you see in the output in SPSS or any other statistics package software, a significance like 0.000, which is less than 5%, it means that we are on the safe side, and there is a relationship of some sort between the class type and the pass or fail at 70% rate. So as you can see, the data is starting to speak more to The data is starting to tell us more about the relationship between the past and between the type of class. We cannot yet assume any causality from one to another, but this is scratching the surface of the data itself. But since we have those binary variables, and we are assuming that one depends on the other, so what we did is another statistical test known under the name of logistic regression, which really tells us whether a dependent variable can be predicted by another variable which is independent. And in this case, both variables are binary. And if you follow the table, the output, unfortunately, I don't have time to give you the background about the methodology and how this output is analyzed, but at least what we can confirm from the data is the following. First of all, looking at the significance number here, which is again less than 5%, less than 0.05, we can say that H1 is valid. It means that the class type is a predictor of the pass or fail, and hence attending in classroom or online can really predict the learning acquisition level. And from the output, what we can say that a face-to-face participant is 1.55 times more likely to succeed in an exam at 70% threshold. Now, certainly, if you look at the R-squared that we have here on top, it's only 1.2%. So what does it say? This says that the class type only explains 1.2% of the variation in the result. And that's expected, honestly, because you cannot really expect that the only variable that determines whether a student pass or fail in an exam is whether they are attending online or face-to-face. There are so many other variables that influence the success or failure and the learning acquisition. Part of it is the course design, the instructor expertise, his or her ability to communicate, the group, the number of participants, their willingness to learn, their set of skills that relate to the class format, and so many other things. But what we have here in front of us is one of the first emerging proofs that people who attend online have a higher rate of success, a higher chance of success. They have 1.55 times, or let's say simply 1.5 times more chances to succeed in an exam at 70% threshold. Now, for you to know, if you drop this rate to 50%, then this probability will increase, and then the impact will be even higher. So that was a second statistics test that we could do here that we call logistic regression, done on with a dependent binary variable. Now, the second area that I would like to also discuss using the data is the impact of gender on result, which in other terms relate to the hypothesis number 2, which means whether you are a male or a female, it seems that this is a predictor of whether you succeed or fail in the exam. And please don't blame me for the results. This is what the data says. Certainly, we're only scratching the surface. We can discuss much more about it. We can study more. And then again, what we learn in research methods is that what you do all the time is ask some questions that will generate more insightful questions to very humbly and very slightly contribute to the body of knowledge and to inspire people for further research. So excuse me in advance for the results for the men specifically, because what I have seen in the data is what I'm sharing with you. So the pass rate, okay, is going to be discussed. However, as I told you, there's a preference for male to attend more classroom than female. At least this is what the data tell us. So I need you to remember this and keep it in mind. So men have usually a higher tendency of attending the face-to-face training. And let's see what the exam scores tell us about that. So just to ensure that the gender itself is a predictor of whether a participant prefers online or face-to-face, then we have done the same test again of logistic regression. And again, we read the findings in the same way. A man is 1.37 times more likely to attend face-to-face trainings than women. And at least from my understanding, maybe women might prefer attending online classes due to cultural family commitment. However, as I clearly wrote in the finding that this hypothesis is beyond the scope of the study, we don't have any means tested right now. But that's very important to see, because later on when we bring both variables together, we need to make sure that somehow they do not predict each other. Now here it shows that there is a little predictability that we can later on further study using the statistical tests. Allow me, before continuing, to say that these methods, ladies and gentlemen, are very powerful. Here we are using it on two binary variables, which is gender versus class or faith. But you can think of a lot of binary variables in human resources where you can apply those tests. You can think about top performer versus low performer as an output versus male or female. You can see whether you're gonna succeed the onboarding or not, based on whether you were interviewed through a competency-based interviewing skills or through a traditional interviewing methodology. There are plenty of variables that can be studied that can inspire our HR data. You know what? I'm pretty sure that all of you have tons of data sitting around that we're not really leveraging to inform decision making in our organization. So I really urge that you, as I said at the beginning, encompass data analytics as part of your competency framework and to work on it. There is a lot of resources that you can read, and it's available. Even if you don't want to attend the course, you can do it for free on your free time. But please consider this recommendation from my end. So let's have a look at the average. In the classroom, a male average score is 79 out of 10, while a lady score is 83 out of 10. Again, that's what the data says. All right, I don't want you to hate me, my fellow man, for that. Okay, I felt very bad when I saw these results, but this is what I can share. Now, interestingly enough, in the virtual learning format, that's the same case. Although both averages dropped, however, female average is 79%, while male average is 75%. Again, the data is starting to suggest that women tend to score higher in both training format. And if we assume that the score of the exam is a good reflection of the learning acquisition, then the data is suggesting that the amount of learning acquired from ladies is slightly higher than that acquired by men in both types of training division. So moving forward, I'd like to have also a look at not only the average score, but also the pass and fail rates for gender, depending on the class type or the class format. As you can see, in classroom, 11% of females failed and 89% of them passed. In virtual, 18% failed and 82% passed. While male in classroom had a 20% fail rate, and male in virtual learning had a 30 or 29% fail rate. As you can see as well, the comparison is in the ladies' favor. However, this is only a descriptive statistics. It requires further statistical tests to confirm the hypothesis. And this is what I'm going to do with you right away. So that's, again, our friend logistic regression. And allow me to give you some background about this test. Logistic regression is a test that determines whether there is a causality as a relationship between an output variable or a dependent variable and a predictor variable or an independent variable. And in this case, what we are assuming in H2, in the hypothesis number 2, is that the gender is a predictor of the success and hence is a predictor of the learning acquisition. How do we read this data? The exponential B number that you can see in the bottom right corner of the SPSS output suggests that if you are a woman, you are almost twice more likely to succeed in an exam. And this comes from both formats combined, face-to-face, classroom, and online learning. Now, it is significant for sure because as you see the p-value or the significance like interval of confidence is almost like very slight. So we're really confident that our hypothesis is not due to chance. And the R-square value is 2%, meaning that, again, the gender cannot explain everything about learning acquisition. It only explains 2% of the result. But again, this should drive some findings from our end. Another thing that I'd like to wrap up with this webinar is by combining the fact of these two variables and seeing whether when you bring together the class type and the gender, would this have more explanation of the result? And as a matter of fact, the finding tells us that gender and class format as variables are both significant predictors of exam score. And this again confirms both hypotheses and tells us that these two variables explain 3.4% together of the variation in the exam score. And this means that a woman attending a classroom training will score almost 8.3% more points than a man attending online. Definitely, ladies and gentlemen, this requires a lot of further research that inspires everyone to study further how the choice of online versus classroom training is done in training departments. But some recommendations that we can extract for sure from this for training managers, for HR professionals watching this webinar, whether today or later on. First of all, give more freedom to the participants to choose the format that they would like to attend. The second thing, whenever someone is attending online, I guess we need more alignment about how to attend the training, how to manage the interruption, how to manage the technology, and why not some online training onboarding programs where you will educate your employees about the video conferencing platforms, how to manage the share screen, how to minimize the interruptions. Definitely. The third thing, I guess, that we need to look after and also reconsider, especially after the pandemic, is the training and development policies and what kind of set up context, environment, and facilitation we are offering for our online learners to ensure that their experience is almost the same as the one in the classroom. A final insight that I'd like to tell you, although without research, is that definitely people who are attending with their laptops or using their laptops have more chances to interact, given the limitation of the application of the phone. And definitely we can increase the effectiveness of online training if we give preferences, choices to the participants, to the learners, and in the same time, if we can give the participants some additional skill set, develop this skill set to make sure that they will be able to cope with the online learning. Now, as I said, the tests that I used today can be used in several other areas in human resources. We can use it to predict performance. We can use it to predict sales targets, competencies that will predict customer satisfaction, competencies that will predict top performance. We can do a lot of more tests on continuous variables, on we can study the measurement tools and how we can validate it. I would like to invite you to read more about that. If you would like as well to attend a full course on all these methods and see how they might be fully utilized to their utmost potential in all areas of HR, in recruitment, in talent management, in succession planning, in learning and development, in performance management, please feel free to have a look at our full 5-day certified HR analyst course, which is offered in both formats as well, depending on which one you prefer. And if you need more information, please feel free to get in touch with me. I know that maybe this webinar gives you only a glimpse about HR analytics, but hopefully it is an appetizer that will just invite you to learn more about it. I really thank you for attending this webinar, and I'll just allow the final couple of minutes for your questions. So in case you have any question, please feel free to drop it or to just type it in the chat box. I'll give you a minute, otherwise we'll wrap up and wish everyone a great afternoon. All right, thank you so much, and enjoy your weekend, and thank you very much for joining, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Meirc.com